That's me, the Mero Mero, Mr. Richard Montañez. I'm the guy who helped bring the world the most popular snack it's ever seen.
Are you ready?
A huevo. I've been ready.
I do have to start with a very basic question. I don't know if you've had this with other UK journalists, because we do have Flamin Hot Cheetos here.
Yeah, but they're like $15 a bag or something.
And also they're different. A lot of the ones are not the same. They're like completely different flavors. So I wanted to ask if you could explain for like an unfamiliar audience, what is the cultural significance? Like what makes the icon that is the Flamin Hot Cheeto? The Flamin Hot brand.
Well, it's the #1 snack in the world. And it's a multi-billion-dollar product that has gone past snacks. There's a makeup line, there's a fashion line, there's Mountain Dew, there's sushi, there's ice cream. Mac and cheese. It's like this Flaming Hot brand has taken over, and it really launched the entire spicy industry back in the 80s and 90s. So for us, obviously being Mexican, or being, not all Latinos like spice, but Mexicans specifically, we put hot sauce on everything. And so we would buy chips and Cheetos and popcorn, and we'd put hot sauce on it. And so Richard in the 70s was like, why don't we just make a spicy chip? And so his idea was very revolutionary, because he said for the Hispanic market, right? Like he's like, why don't you market differently and do different products for different sectors of the market? And before Richard, no major Fortune 500 company really did that. There was no multicultural marketing person. And so he's really known as the godfather of Latino marketing.
Oh my gosh, it is. I mean, it's like the texture of a fresh bag, coupled with like the flavor. When you get a fresh bag, the crunch, it's delicious, and then it gets a little moist in your mouth. It's just, it's amazing. It's all the things that you want in a snack.
And I think sometimes it's like the heat is existing. Like it's not gonna overwhelm you if you keep eating.
Yes.
You know, as soon as you stop eating something hot, it's like, then it's hot. But if you keep eating it, it's not as hot.
Yeah, and I feel like the hot Cheeto itself doesn't, like, it's not super, super hot, you know?
Right.
I mean, do you guys just have like a lifetime amount of hot Cheetos now? Or did you eat so many that you're like, I'm done?
No,
like, thank you for the job.
They're sending truckloads, you know? We're going out to
Not even in bags.
Yeah, no, just like a dump truck full of Cheetos. She was swimming in them. It was quite a scene.
It took a while to get the red dye 40 off my body, but we're here.
You can't even tell that you've been swimming in Cheetos.
Thank you so much.
She's gone through a lot of makeup.
Thank you.
What's so interesting about this movie is it's a very individual story, and yet the barriers that he keeps coming up against are so familiar. And the one that really stood out to me is, trying to kind of talk around without spoiling it too much for audiences, but there's a moment where the corporate powers to be sort of allow this idea to happen and then don't like put their full support behind it. And I was watching it going, oh my God, that happens in Hollywood all the time. So I wondered if that scene kind of particularly resonated with you.
Yeah, all the time. It's so funny too, because now we're on this press tour and marketing the movie, and it's so hard to get a movie made and cast and, you know, produced and edited and all of that. And so you finally hear it and you have the product and you go, here you go, and you turn it over to this whole marketing machine with hopes they don't screw it up, right? With hopes that they do what needs to be done. And luckily we have an amazing marketing team at Searchlight, and they're 1,000 supportive of the movie. They see how well it's performing, they see how well it's resonating. You know, we just started all the international press, and that's just blown up because I think some people felt like it might be too American of a movie. You know, it's about the American dream and it's about a specific community, but the global response has been insane, from Germany and Italy and France. And, you know, it's like the journey of Richard has no boundaries. What he went through is universal, you know, and so it's really, a lot of people are relating to his journey. That's why I did the movie, because I was like, I'm Richard Montañez. I've been told no. I've been told ideas don't come from people like you. You're a woman, maybe you shouldn't direct. And we just dared to ask, but why not? Why not me?
And I think it also, like, that popularity has something to do with your direction as well, because I loved that you shift the visual language kind of to suit what's going on in the story. Like there's a scene in the cafeteria that sort of plays like a high school movie. And I wondered if I could ask just some of if there were specific inspirations that you were drawing from, just in terms of the visual language.
There's so many specific inspirations. I can't. Ron Howard, Steven Spielberg, Scorsese, Adam McKay, all for different reasons. But that scene you're talking about, that was my casino scene. I loved in Casino when they're explaining the casino and they go, first you got the dealers. The dealers are watched by the pit bosses. The pit bosses are watched by the floor managers. The floor managers are watched by the bird in the sky and da-da-da-da. And it was fast and whip pans and zoom ins and it was like 30 seconds and you go, got it. I got the lay of the land. And I felt like in the factory we were gonna need to explain to the audience a little bit of the hierarchy and the pecking order in which they exist. And we did it in a fantasy sequence. We did it with the wink that we do everything, which is in Richard's point of view. So when we rewrote the script with Linda Chavez, we were like, it needs to be in Richard's point of view. He's funny, he's charming, he's smart, he's uneducated, he's very complex. And I said, it has to be in his voice. And so because we immediately did that, we were able to have this creative liberty to be in his mind. And he had so many stories of like, he goes, I didn't know what a boardroom was. I thought a boardroom was where they stored boards, you know, like wood. And we laughed and we're like, oh my God, wouldn't it be funny if he thought in the boardroom, he actually thought they wore tuxedos too or something like that. We were gonna put them in tuxedos, but he goes, wouldn't it be funny, you know, Linda and I was like, wouldn't it be funny if they spoke like him in the boardroom? Like he thinks that they sound like him, because why wouldn't they, right? So those scenes were really based on this show called Drunk History. I don't know if you've seen Drunk History, where
I love Drunk History.
I love Drunk History. I was like, it should be Drunk History. It should be Jesse's voice, Richard's voice, but the actors. And so we knocked it out of the park, because it's the two highest rated scenes in the movie are both the Cholo scenes in the boardrooms. Then I was looking at factory movies, because I was like, how am I gonna shoot this factory? We spend so much time in the factory, and I didn't want it to be blue and cold and gray. And so I worked a lot with my production designers and my DP to figure out the lighting of what it would look like and how it would be different from the lighting and the tone of the house. And one of our favorite references for Federico and I, my DP, was The Post by Spielberg. And you know, they spend most of the time in that newspaper factory. And the way Spielberg hides coverage in a oneer was something I was committed to doing. I was like, we don't need to do a lot of setups, but I am gonna do coverage, but it's gonna be in a oneer. And people are like, how? And I'm like this. And I would show them Jurassic Park, or I would show them, you know, The Post, or I would show, like Spielberg does that a lot. Like it's just sweeping, but then it turns into a close-up and you're like, how did he do that? I use a lot of Adam McKay because I love his journalistic approach, and I felt like people don't understand the Chicano movement in the United States and how we also are discriminated against. And so I love how in his movies, he really sets the table. So like in The Big Short, when he's like, look, this is what happened in 2008. You know, mortgages went up, prices went down, interest rates, whatever. And he says it like super fast. He says it like super fast. And so I said, I want to do it like that. I need to tell people like, look, this is what a Chicano is. Our rights were being taken away, we were being shipped off to war, we were being police brutality, like all this stuff was happening. So this is the era in which Richard grew up. And it's super fast. Like it was like, you know, I think the montage was like 24 seconds. And people go, oh, I got it. So it's not a history lesson, but it is setting the table for the era because we did different decades. What else? Ron, Adam, and then Scorsese. You know, his movies have the strongest point of view with this beautiful lyrical voiceovers, and so I knew because we were in Richard's point of view, we were gonna have voiceover, and it's not as slow and lyrical as Scorsese's, but it's definitely powerful. Like I didn't ever want to say what we were seeing. I wanted the voiceover to say what we weren't seeing, and to say what he was feeling or what the image was betraying. And so, yeah, there's a lot of references.
You know, in terms of working with a director like Eva Longoria, who obviously has like a very formidable acting CV behind her, working with an actor director kind of change the process of how you work, because you're kind of with somebody who like gets it?
Yeah, I mean, she gets it. That's you said just perfectly. She understands the process, and she also understands how, you know, what we. Some of it takes time, right? And so we also shot very, very fast. There's a lot of things to shoot in a very short amount of time. It was a period piece, and we would go through wig changes in the middle of the day. So it was a very long and fast and furious shoot.
Face. But luckily, her background in directing TV and our background in TV, we were ready for the quick pace of it all.
And Jesse, I mean, it's kind of for the both of you, but probably mostly for Jesse. You're in a really interesting position where you're playing real life people, but they're not like so much in the spotlight that you're having to scour over like footage to get every single mannerism right. So as actors, I mean, how do you find that really nice balance between being truthful to who this couple are, but also, I guess, finding your own space with the character and finding who you are within the character?
Well, I think it was more important to tell his story than it was to do an imitation of him. I think doing an imitation of him would have been a disservice to his story. We showed where they came from, they showed the relationship, and that's what people cared about. They didn't care that I don't speak exactly like him, you know, because at the end of the day, it's like we're telling their legacy. We're not telling their mannerisms, you know? It's not a documentary, it's a movie. It's supposed to entertain you and make you feel things and educate you about a very important story, and especially in the Latino history.
Yeah, and Annie, what I've found so beautiful about this movie is that, like, there's a lot of moving pieces, and there's a lot of history, and there's kind of the politics of the Cheeto creation, but Eva she's created so much space for you two as characters to kind of find that love. Like, I could really feel the connection between these two individuals, and also like the connection they have with their entire family. So I wondered, as actors, like, you said that you shot really, really fast. How did you still make that space for their relationship to feel like it's been there forever?
Yeah, well, Jesse and I have known each other for a good like 4 or 5 years now, and I was a big fan of Jesse even before I got on the project. I was like in love with him since he had done Quinceañera, and I remember when we had met just in, you know, Latino Hollywood scene, I was like, oh snap, like I love this guy. And
then I saw her, I'm like, ah, I love her. I love her.
So I mean, it's natural, like, and then we got to know each other a little more, especially during like the chemistry reads and that whole process of us, and it was seamless. He's my family. I mean, we talk, like, even after wrapping filming, we talk at least once a week on the phone for about an hour, just about life and how we're doing and pooping.
Wait, so what'd you say?
You heard us right.
I love it. That's a good level of friendship.
You know, and a great love story, really. If you can't start off as friends, how can you continue as lovers?
I mean, now I get it. Now I get why the chemistry was so easy. But Jesse, I kind of wanted to. This is a real pivot, but this is quite a serious question.
Go.
I think what is also really interesting about this movie is that, you know, it's such an individual story, and it's so intimate in that way, but it also really takes the time to contextualize, you know, what is happening with the wider Latino experience in America. Like, there's a whole section with Reagan and how his politics affected the community, and so I wondered, like, did that side of the film affect you at all? In terms, did you feel an extra pressure that, like, this isn't just about this guy's story, it's about a lot of people's stories?
I mean, yes and no. I understood that this movie was bigger than all of us, right? But I also had a responsibility just to tell his story. Like, I don't have that responsibility to carry on the weight of all of these things as Jesse Garcia or as Richard, you know? My responsibility is telling Richard's story and being honest to what I'm doing during the shooting days. Now we're talking about it. Now we're talking about how this is a bigger story, bigger movement than what the movie is, right? I think, and it also transcends cultural lines, that this is a relatable story for everyone, that everyone's been the underdog, everyone's needed faith at some point. So it's, I think I'm able to compartmentalize that. Otherwise, you know, I'm gonna implode.
Yeah.